Brother, come on with your words, brother.
Okay, so today I have a very hi Feba. I have a
Hi.
very short. I mean, it's a very simple narrative that we are going to look at, but as an ode to my 8 months here in Chennai, and of course the many years of beautiful friendship that I have enjoyed with the Chetpet Marthoma youth. Today we are going to talk about a very lovely friendship that we see in the Old Testament between Jonathan and David. Okay, it is an unlikely friendship, but a friendship that was very God honoring. And we look at what that story was, and we will look at what that means for us in the now and in the today. Okay, now all of us know a lot about David. We know some stuff about Jonathan, but let me kind of just introduce the characters to you. David, when we meet him in the Bible, is certainly not the King David that we know of. He is this humble shepherd boy. And Jonathan, when we meet him in the Bible, is already an accomplished warrior and he is a prince. He is King Saul's son. Okay, so right there off the bat, if we were to look at in the here and the now, these are very unlikely friends, okay, because not only is David just a humble shepherd boy who by no means would have had access to the king's son, who was also a powerful warrior in his own right, but David being the one who would finally usurp or take over the throne of Saul. So it's a very unlikely friendship, but when man's heart, obedience, and love for God trumps the comfort of our situation, we see something very beautiful come through. Okay, so let me start by talking to you about why these two should never have been friends, okay, in the first place. So David was a shepherd, Jonathan was a prince. Jonathan had his own armor, okay, but what did David have? Nothing but his harp and a slingshot. Jonathan grew up in the palace and he was trained in the art of war. David grew up in a little town in Bethlehem and was trained to tend sheep. Jonathan was the oldest son and he was in line to inherit the throne. David was the youngest of 8 boys, often overlooked, yet anointed the next king in place of Jonathan. Jonathan was from the tribe of Benjamin. David was from the tribe of Judah. Now, despite all their differences, they became the best of friends. Okay. Now, all of us know the story of David and Goliath, and that is how David kind of shot into prominence with Saul, his army, and the whole thing. But before that, what history tends to kind of ignore is the fact that Jonathan on his own right was a very mighty warrior. So if somebody can read to me from 1 Samuel chapter 14, just pull out the exact reference. So we're looking at first Samuel chapter 14 from probably 11 to 14. 1 Samuel 14, 11 to 14. If somebody can come off mute and read for me.
When the Philistines saw them coming, they shouted, "Look, the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes." Then the men from the outpost shouted to Jonathan, "Come on up here and we'll teach you a lesson." "Come on, climb right behind me," Jonathan said to his armor bearer, "for the Lord will help us defeat them." So they climbed up using both hands and feet, and the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer killed those who came behind them. They killed some 20 men in all, and their bodies were scattered over half an acre.
So we see that Jonathan in his own right is a Philistine slayer. He has a displayed faith in God and he has won his own battle. Okay. So he is not somebody who is somebody ignorable who, then we just see, David just jump into the scene like that. So he was a great man of God. And what he knew of David at that point was what? A messenger boy, an errand boy who would come once in a while and play the harp and lyre to calm his tormented father down. Okay, so if you see in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 15, if somebody can read for me that.
1 Samuel.
17:15.
But David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem.
So you see that his nature of job was just to do back and forth and things like that. And suddenly he was shot into fame after he slay Goliath down. So if somebody can push to 1 Samuel 17, verse 57 to all the way up to chapter 18, verse 1.
Amy, just repeat. Amy, what's the child?
1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 57 to 1 Samuel 18, verse 1.
As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with David still holding the Philistine's head. "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked him. David said, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." After David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself.
So now put yourself in Jonathan's shoes. Okay, there is somebody who has done what you have done, but in a more better and dramatic way. All right, I'm sure all of us have been here in life, whether it is with your sibling, whether it is in your educational institutions, or whether it's been in the workplace. There is somebody who does something better than you, right? Okay. Now is the time I want reactions. How have you felt? And let's be honest. So it is human nature that there are some people that you accept that they can be better than you. But aren't there some people that you can never accept that they can be better than you, right? So how does that make you feel? Can I have reactions? Envious? Okay. Yes. We've all felt envy. What else?
Inferiority complex.
Yes. Inferiority complex. Overlooked? Absolutely, yes. And even if you were looking at it in a positive spin, what will you do? You will say, what can I do better, right? Okay, let's say this is a positive thing in your workplace, somebody is doing, or, even in the youth, or you'll really take a step back. And if I was Jonathan, I would say, okay, what did this guy do? Why that I didn't, okay? But in all of that, what is it? It is me looking inwards into me. Okay, but I think here what we see happening with Jonathan is something very beautiful, that Jonathan was Godward looking and not inward looking. So which is why when somebody like a David came, in front of him, it was not envy, it was not inferiority, it was nothing, but it was pure joy and this desire to be yoked with this person. So what does the scripture tell us? Jonathan became one in spirit with David and he loved him as himself. Okay, so we see a supernatural love being produced for David in Jonathan's heart. And that is only because Jonathan's heart first belonged to the purposes of God. It was God honoring, which is why he could recognize what David's place in the kingdom was. And it is not just a passing love, right? If imagine this is a chap who's going to take my throne, right? So becoming one in spirit is a very unlikely reaction that we see in Jonathan. Okay. And later on, if you go from 1 Samuel chapter 18, 5 to 7, can somebody read that?
1 Samuel
15. It's 1 Samuel 18, verses 5 to 7.
Whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. So Paul made him a commander, welcomed by the commander over the men of war, an appointment that was welcomed by the people, and Saul offered alike. When the victorious Israelite army was returning home after David had killed the Philistine, women from all the town of Israel came out to meet the king Saul. They sang and danced for joy with tremendous with and cymbals. This is what their song was. Saul has killed his 1,000 and David in 10,000. Which was
Yeah, that's it till then. Okay. So again, coming back to Jonathan, it was his move that despite all his differences, he starts now becoming yoked with David for a common purpose. So what are the commonalities that now bond them? That even though they come from different backgrounds, they now have become both warriors and they are men of faith who start serving a living God. And in that friendship, what we see, they start providing for each other and they give each other encouragement and they give each other strength. And they're there later on when you see the story. Jonathan is really there in David through his crisis. You know, often overlooking his own father to rescue and further David's purposes. But we know that it's not David's purposes, it's God's purposes that Jonathan recognized. This is also a very special story for you and me because in a friendship, this is probably the only time the word covenant is used. Okay, so if somebody can read to me again, 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 1 to 4.
after David had finished taking with Saul, he met Jonathan, the king's son. There was an immediate bond between them, for Jonathan loved David. From that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. And Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. Jonathan sealed the perfect pact by taking off his robe and giving it to David, together with his tunic, sword, bow, and belt. Whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. So Saul made.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's it. Thanks, Tanya. Till there. Thanks, Tanya. Till there. That's fine. Okay, now if I can get some reactions, what do you understand a covenant as?
Promise.
A promise, yes. A promise of sorts, yes, okay. Who else?
Commitment to one another.
What else? Okay. Sorry?
Commitment.
Commitment. Is that what somebody said?
Yeah.
Could it be like a promise
okay.
made before God or something on that, I think, on the ground?
The promise before God. So that's right. It's like a Bible, we see there are conditional promises. We see there are unconditional promises that, don't have to depend on God, man's faithfulness. It depends on God's faithfulness. All right. I'm just going to read one particular portion from 1 Samuel 20, verse 42, where Jonathan really confirms this covenant with David. He says, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever." Okay. Now, the success of this friendship, which we see David has only benefited from this friendship, and Jonathan had only losses in this friendship, so to speak. If you were to weigh the gains and losses in an earthly valuable terms, right? So Jonathan loses his throne. That was his right of thing. He loses a relationship with his father. Eventually, even, his father throws a spear at him also. So things go down to that level, but he remains true to this covenant with David. Right now, what are we to make of all this? And one is, are we friends like this to each other? Secondly, is Jesus such a friend to us? And are we such a friend to the cause of Christ? in this world, you know. So this is why I've decided to speak about this friendship, because as Christians, when we are in a youth fellowship, when we are sharing our lives, let's look inward and see, are these the kind of friends that we are to others around them? You know, instead of looking at what kind of friends they are to us, let's have a self check. Am I a Jonathan, where I recognize in people the purposes and plans of God to be accomplished through them? And then how am I, with my friendship, edifying, even to a point of sacrifice, allowing them to create a space, allowing them to accomplish the purposes of God? Okay, now, again, like I said, I chose this topic because, I hope to leave very soon. And I have so been encouraged with the friendships that I have made at this church, which till today have served me well, right? And in the world's perspective, yes, my friends and I from the youth, we've gone out, we've eaten together, we've stayed in each other's homes. When I had crisis, they lifted me up. These were all physical things in the world, but instead what they were allowing for is creating a space for God to do his pruning work in me, for me to get an environment which allowed me to receive what God was teaching me, pruning me, encouraging me, disciplining me, things like that, right? So these friendships that you have around you are not innocuous, they are not vacuous, they are not just happenstance. These have been planted by God in your life for a purpose. So have fun with each other, which is a great way to connect. Let it not be your starting and ending point of your relationship with your friends in the youth, especially because God has chosen you all in this space and time to live together so that he can establish his purposes through you. So you are the vehicle through which God is going to establish his purposes on this earth here for now. All right. So let me just summarize and talk about 4 aspects that we can take away from the friendship of David and Jonathan, and thereafter extrapolate that into all of our lives. Friendship is a gift from God. So Jonathan really looked at it as a gift from God. Okay. And so now when you go back and see the way he treated David, he was able to do it supernaturally, almost going beyond every tendency of human reaction. It's because he treated David as a gift from God. Now, in their context, it was a gift from God to the nation of Israel itself, because he was the second king, but the righteous king and a God-appointed king. Yeah. We also see that he was able to work with God to help David, be a relief to David, a comfort to David, a support to David, and also a strategic. So it was not just, hey, let's meet for drinks. Oh, my father did wrong with you, I'm so sorry. It was not just empty platitude. It was strategy that both of them employed, worked with. If you remember that story about, you shoot the arrows and I'll send that boy, and how you respond. So these were all very clever strategies that Jonathan and David used for the purposes of God. So when your friendship is true, when it's God ordained and inspired, you will work together for establishing God's purposes here on earth. The second thing that we can take from this is that a friend loves at all times. So he was not a friend who loved David only when it was convenient for him to love. He was not a friend who said, okay, as long as my dad is not gunning to kill you, as long as my sister is married to you, I will, kind of be friends with you. Till God's plans were established in David. So it was not a friendship of convenience, but it was a friendship that caused a lot of conflict in Jonathan's life, but he was able to identify the cause. So this is not to say that fight with your parents and hang out with your friends. Please, that is not what I'm saying. Do not quote me on this. But like I said, have God-honoring friendships that go beyond conveniences, even for your personal stake. And we see in one of the verses that we read that Jonathan loved him in the spirit as himself. So a true friend loves you as himself. And here, if I was to extrapolate it, it is, if you want salvation for yourself, if you want an eternal reward for yourself, then you will freely without reservation, without embarrassment, without any nervousness. Share the gospel with your friends and share Jesus with your friends, because that is the best thing that you can offer them, eternal life, because that is what you chose for yourself in the first place. So a true friend loves as himself. And how do we display that to the world? By offering Jesus without any reservation in our lives. And the last takeaway that we can probably extrapolate from this is a true friend helps you find the strength in God, right? If somebody can read to me 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse 16. One Samuel 23:16.
And Saul's son Jonathan went to David at Horesh and helped him find strength in God.
Jonathan went to Horesh and helped him find strength in God, right? So I really hope that you can go back and look at this story. There are many nuances. It's a story that pans across several chapters. But if you have the time, I would encourage you to go and study, because we can find great truths for us in this little snippet. And above all, what we also see is that Jesus has been such a friend to us, and he has called us to be such friends to those around us today. So I'm just going to close with the quote by C.S. Lewis, where he says, "In friendship, we think we have chosen our peers. In reality, a few years difference in the dates of our births, a few more miles between certain houses, the choice of one university instead of another, the accident of a topic being raised or not raised at a first meeting, any of these chances might have kept us apart. But for a Christian, there are strictly speaking no chances. A secret master of ceremonies has been at work. Christ, who said to the disciples, 'Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you,' can truly say to every group of Christian friends, 'Ye have not chosen one another, but I have chosen you for one another.' The friendship is not a reward for our discriminating and good taste in finding one another out. It is the instrument by which God reveals to each of us the beauties of others." Okay. So with that,